incredible blessing, it comes with a price. And I started to learn about that price when I went into polyamory. Psychedelics don't tell you things that you don't want to do. It unlocks actually what you want to do.
Welcome to the Dr. Espen podcast. I'm your host, Espen. Today I'm coming to you live from Chokaruna Media Studio in Austin, Texas, aka the Aubrey Marcus studio. And I don't think it's a surprise that I'm here blessed to interview Mr. Aubrey Marcus. Aubrey Marcus is a visionary in the theme and in the expansion of consciousness. Today we're going to have a conversation about plant medicine. We're going to talk about the sacred masculine. We're going to talk about what true love and healing really is. And we're going to have the opportunity to be radically honest and unapologetically self-expressive. I'm sure many of you have heard about Aubrey Marcus, but if you haven't, he is the founder of On It. He is a leader in the men's space in sacred sexuality, and he's also what I consider to be an absolute pioneer in merging the divine masculine and feminine. What do you think now, when we look at the expansion of consciousness, what do you think are some of the key tools that or ways that plant medicine plays a role in where humanity is going at the moment?
I think there's a lot of energy focused on plant medicine for a specific outcome related to either a symptom, a disease state, depression, end-of-life anxiety. So there's been this whole medical rush that a lot of people are focused on. How to change your mind, right? Like maybe you're thinking one way and you can clarify your thoughts. All of that is important. All of that is true. I think the thing that is underestimated in its importance is the apotheosis, the actual physical sensation, feeling, gnosis of God, creator energy, or beings, avatars that have reached that fruition in human form, like the Christ, right? So the plant medicine offers a bridge to that ineffable divine and gives you a felt gnosis of it. And that changes so many things downstream. Because once you know that God is real, and once you've had an encounter with Yeshua, with the Christ consciousness, and you've had that encounter, you can never go back the same way. Now, you can subtly forget, and you always do, so anybody out there who's had one of those experiences and they're not living their life permanently in the gnosis of what they experience, that's normal. But also, you're never going to be quite at the same baseline because you're going to know something is real, and it'll take a little while for that to actually reflect itself through your life. But that changes everything, really. That's how my journey started. I started as a stone cold atheist, materialist, reductionist whose mission was to tear down organized religion because I thought it was a crock of shit that conducted so much evil throughout the world. And I was going to be the philosophical Christopher Hitchens of the new generation and just rip it to shreds. And then I felt my body melt into pure consciousness. And the only word I had for it was a soul. And the only thing that contained all of the souls was God. And I was like, oh my God, I got to think about this in an entirely different way. And it changed the course of my life. The other thing is that a lot of people think that when you have these psychedelic experiences, if you're in the financial markets or you're an athlete, it's going to tell you, no, don't do that. Be a yoga teacher. Psychedelics don't tell you things that you don't want to do. It unlocks actually what you want to do. So if you want to be trading derivatives, you'll still be trading derivatives, just with a better felt sense of who you are and why you're doing it and the God that you're serving while you're doing it. If you want to be an athlete, an MMA fighter, or whatever you want to be, if that's really what you want, psychedelics will just help you actually clarify that desire. And then if you decide to be a yoga teacher, it's you deciding to be a yoga teacher. It's not the mushrooms telling you. They don't have a fucking agenda. So, I think those are some of the thoughts about how I look at psychedelics. But I think the primary drive of it is to connect you with the dimensions of consciousness that are in you, as you, through you, and beyond you.
We shared a stage together at Gaia, and at the time I didn't know that Chief Bear Cross and Chief Iron Eyes were actually in the audience. And when they heard that you were there, they were really excited and honored to be able to, do an EP. And you've been in this tradition, honoring that tradition as something that I really see with such integrity within you, that you really are bringing forth a lot of the teachings, the ancient teachings that seem to be forgotten, particularly in the Western world. If you were to summarize that, if you were to say there are sacred teachings that allowed us as a species to live in alignment with the earth, with God, that has been forgotten. What are some of the things now as part of this potential renaissance of humanity that you believe is returning? What are some of the most important things that we can focus on to live in coherence with God and with the earth?
2 words. Mitakuye oyasin. To all my relations.
Yeah.
It's this statement that is repeated over and over and over again by our First Nations brothers and sisters. And they repeat it to remind themselves, because the ego, the part of you that says, I am not connected to the whole, I am separate. Ego in Latin means I am, but like really it means I am not. Right? Like the ego defines you as a separate self. And it's beautiful. You're always going to have that. You're always going to have the boundary where your skin ends and a table begins, or the place where you can make love. But there's other connections that you share with the whole world. So to remind yourself constantly, Mitakuye oyasin, we are all related. And that means related to the mineral kingdom, the plant kingdom, the animal kingdom, the sky kingdom, the earth kingdom, the star kingdom, the divine Wakan Tanka, like the whole great mystery of it all. And that starts to unwind what Charles Eisenstein calls the myth of separation. This idea that we are skin encapsulated egos, that it's just, we're separate selves and that's all there is. And so the combination of that reminder, I think, is something that we need to remember. And we need to remember, and they do, our Indigenous brothers and sisters do such a good job in that reminder, in the remembrance that we're all related. And so that's, I think one of the most powerful teachings that they hold. They've never forgotten that. Despite all of the horrors and atrocities they've experienced, they've never forgotten that. And so that's, I think, one of the great gifts that they have to share. And it's not only, their culture that remembers that. Many cultures remember that. And many psychonauts come to the same conclusion. You start to blur the boundaries between yourself and the trees and the weather and the sky and the people around you. Everything starts to, you realize how permeable you are. As like the Kybalion says in the first law, all is mind, the universe is mental. We're all participating in this one cosmic unicity. And we're also unique. We're a unique facet of this. So, my lineage teaching with Rebbe Gafni combines that teaching, which he calls a true self teaching, which is the interconnectedness of you with all of life, and the recognition that you have a unique story, a unique fingerprint, blueprint, soul print that you're here to offer. And as it's said by the masters, like the Torah, which is, you could think of it like the Akashic records, that story of the Akash or the Torah would not be complete without your name. Like, so your unique name is actually necessary for God to reach its fruition, for the love story of the universe to be truly told.
There's music to my ears. It's interesting because there's a dichotomy there, right?
Right.
So you have the Kybalion and you have all is mental, and you extrapolate that of the 7 principles, Hermetic principles, into the 12 universal laws. And the number 1 law is the law of unity.
Yeah.
So on one hand, to all my relations,
right.
I am you, you are me, we are each other. If we can live that way, we can come home because we know that we are within each other, and at the same time, we are separate. We are unique. And that's where I want to go next, because that is what you, I think, have done incredibly well. You have mastered something, or at least gotten very close to mastering something that I still am working on, and I know many people that I know are still working on. And it's the notion that I mentioned in the introduction, which is the radical self-expression, unapologetic self-expression, the honesty. And this is interesting because I interviewed Dr. Zach Bush recently, and they talked about this one frequency that they found on their research that was 40 times more powerful than the frequency of love. And he said it was an anomaly. He said they couldn't pick it right away. It was weird, but every time there was some level of expression, it spiked 40 times higher. And when they went back and looked at the metadata, what they found is that the frequency of authenticity, and it's not just I'm being me for the sake of being joyful. It could also be like a child, like, no, just like fully, radically being, and within that, I think, as I mentioned, you've done that so well. Is there a secret to that? Is it just like saying fuck it and just being it? Because people are going to come at you. They're going to say some shit. I get it. But you are, and I think that's why so many people are following you. I think you just dropped a podcast, which is where we're going next, about your relationship with your wife and your beloved. That in itself is just like, there's going to be some comments on that.
For sure.
But thank God you're doing it, because you're allowing us to see that it's possible to truly speak our truth. Can you give us your context on that? And if there's any advice that you can share, blast us, please.
Yeah. Well, there was a time where if you shared your truth, like Giordano Bruno.
Yeah, great example.
You wound up getting burned in a pile of sticks by the church, by empire in its many forms. So I use this control mechanism that's been around in the world, and I just call it by the name capital E, empire. So empire takes many forms. It's taken the form of a church. It's taken the form of a nation. It's taken the form of cultural movement, whatever it is. But the energy of empire is always about top-down control and suppression of personal power and autonomy, and radical suppression of somebody's unique authenticity, because that's a key to unlocking your power. So there was a time where it was very physically dangerous, and the amount of torture you might have to undergo to share your authentic truths. I mean, look at Yeshua, right? Yeah. Like the examples are innumerable. And then for every name we know, there's millions more that we don't know. Those quiet, quote, witches without a name that were practicing their own sacred plant medicines and healing their people, and that were burned and that were tortured. And I mean, it's just, that was the reason that I was, decided that I was going to go after religion. I was going to go after that vector of empire. So this is historically, we feel this in our epigenetic lineage, our understanding, like we feel that it's dangerous. And now, what is empire actually doing? Well, they can shadow ban your Instagram account. Oh no.
Yeah, that happened.
Right. Of course. It happened to everybody who's speaking the truth. And it's a little annoying. It might drop your revenue a little bit. Or they can write some nasty comments on your YouTube or your social media. They're pixels, not pitchforks.
Cool.
Right? Like, they're pixels. It's not that, we're not risking that much. And if we actually remember our true warrior ancestors and what they stood for and what they risked, and then realizing what we're risking, it's like there's no reason to be afraid. Like, there's no reason to be afraid. And when you start to get comfortable speaking your truth, and you can let all of that fear-based strategy go, which had its place, because I don't know if I would be this authentic if the consequences were crucifixion or burning at the stake or, going into a dungeon of the Inquisition. I mean, I would hope that my warrior spirit was strong enough, and maybe in a past life it was, maybe it wasn't, but that would be a different story. I mean, I'm not going to proclaim that no matter what the consequences, but these consequences, I mean, I can look at myself when I watch a movie about a hero and what they risked and what they sacrificed. It always brings me to tears. Like I could watch The Notebook 100 times and I'll be dry as the Sahara Desert. I watch Braveheart 300 for the 50th time, and on the 50th time, I cry as much as the first time because I remember that that's a part of who I am. And so I feel like it's my sacred responsibility, and also just from a logical, rational perspective, we're not risking that much. We're risking way less than, we ever were. And to just realize that all of that stuff, it doesn't have to land. It doesn't have to have meaning. And if you're really stepping forward and sharing your truth, you're going to take the arrows. You're going to take the criticisms, but they're not real arrows. They're digital arrows. They're like, fucking NFT arrow. Like, I'm going to hit you with this NFT. You're like, ouch. Like it's not real. And I think that really helps a lot. And it doesn't mean that, you may feel some things and your emotions may get stirred up, and, having people say things that are patently untrue about you. I have whole websites that are claiming all kinds of crazy stories about me that are just absolutely patently false. And and you feel a certain sense of betrayal, but fundamentally, like, did that affect anything that happened over this past weekend? Did, my brothers and sisters there love me less, or did my beloveds love me less, or did my family love me less? Did it prevent me from playing pickleball and living my life? No, it didn't. So I just really feel like it's important for people to realize that the risk that they're imagining is not the risk that's real. There's far less risk than you actually think. And there's so much liberation and beauty in being able to share your truth. So, I remember during COVID, there was a period where it was so intense online that it was very difficult to share your authentic opinion. And so I held back a little bit for a stretch, and I felt like I was suffocating. Like I was actually miserable. And then finally I was like, fuck it. And I wrote like a 7-minute spoken word piece and I put it out, and that really liberated me. I felt like I got my voice back. And that was a good lesson for me. It was a good lesson of just, this is the thing that will allow me to live my true nature, potential, actualization, and anything less will be doing myself a massive disservice.
It's interesting when you look at Giordano Bruno. He was, yes, burnt alive for teaching something that didn't match the geocentric Ptolemaic Christian religious constructs at the time. But today we use what he shared that he was ridiculed for every single day.
Yep.
So even though his body's perished, never ever will his mission be lost.
Yep.
But we don't even need to face that. My question to the listeners and viewers would be, what would we have to face if we're not authentic? If we have heard of the book, The 5 Common Regrets of the Dying.
Yes. Bronnie Ware.
Exactly. So number one is, I wish I had the courage to live a life true to me and not the life that other people expected of me. So by being authentic, we can actually truly live our own unique signature. So what's the risk of doing it? Someone throws a digital, piece of bullshit at you.
Yeah.
What's the risk of not being you?
Yep.
Right. That's the risk. I love it. I fucking love it. That is so good. So the question to listeners and viewers, where can you truly learn to embody yourself, to truly express yourself unapologetically? And you're going to piss some people off, but better be free instead of trapped. I love it. Okay. I want to.
And also the other thing is, attention is something that actually is hard to get. So if someone's writing you a scathing, 5-minute invective on your social media, like, there's a part of you that can be like, hey, thanks for the attention. Like, thanks for the attention. Like, if you really look at this as like, gathering attention is actually a value in itself. It's something that, children will throw a tantrum to get their mother's attention because they know that attention it's like the gaze of the divine in some way. But all of this is just attention. And it's up to you to carry that responsibility well, not gather attention for attention's sake. But anything that comes at you, it's just energy. And like a great Aikido master, like the more energy is coming towards you, the more you can use that energy to flip someone and throw them on their back and like use their energy for your own benefit. So don't be afraid of stirring up a little attention. That's another aspect to look at. Like, so be grateful when that post blows up because there's so much controversy and conflict. Like, all right, cool. I started a conversation, and even in the triggering of people, like that's for them. You're not doing it to them. It's for them. Unless you're just being egregious and super aggressive or something, don't be a dick. But ultimately, like the attention it's valuable. People are giving you their attention. So there's another underlying current of gratitude. Like, thanks for the attention.
Reminds me of a quote by John DiMartini. He says, if you're not crucified, you're not on purpose.
Yeah.
You got to stir the pot.
Yeah.
If you're going to raise consciousness, there will be some low frequencies that'll throw some arrows at you, as you said. That means that it's working. I love it, Aubrey. Okay. Let's go relationships. Okay.
Let's do it.
Thousands of years, has to be a certain way, certain cultures, right? So, for example, let's say in India, there's arranged marriage, very often common. There's a fixed structure to relationship. On the Western side, husband, wife, monogamy, that's it. That's it. Or you're single, right? Nature is never fixed like that. And I just wonder, you've had some experiences, right? With your ex some years ago, long time, polyamorous.
Yeah.
And experienced that. Then into your current relationship with your wife and your beloved. I would love to know more, particularly, and not from a place of ego,
right?
But from a place of where do we break the paradigm to come back to that level of authenticity from us, not from lust, particularly not from the masculine side, like, oh yeah, I want to have, be a King Solomon. That's not the point. But just tell us a little bit about your relationship. And I know you got an episode come out, so obviously we want to get the listeners and viewers to go and watch that as well. Sure. If they want to learn more about this. Take it away.
Well, I think that we have a lot of models in the past of a patriarchal, masculine tilted version of this story where kings and powerful leaders had multiple wives or consorts. And I think there was some intelligence to establishing a universal monogamy code because cultures realized, and this happened in the Aztec culture, whereas like the Jaguar Knights got five women and the Eagle Knights got 10 women and the higher chiefs got 50. And then, well, guess what? There's not enough women to go around. So then you have younger men who don't have a pool of available females who then turn hostile, subversive, ruthless to try and climb the power ranks. So it can be destabilizing if you have it only in one direction, where there's just men of power get to have many different women, then it starts to dry up the supply. So from a cultural, stability sense, I understand it. And then, of course, to get people to do things, they weave in a lot of religious dogma and fear and different things to enforce these rules that are not criminal, but actually, and there are some actual like legal rules preventing this in most states outside of Utah, et cetera. So, but we've seen this story play out, tilted toward the masculine advantage in the past. And I think there is something natural about that you see in the animal kingdom. You see the alpha who has many females. And when I first started to think about this, I thought of it in that way. I was like, well, this is what's natural. A lion has many females in his pride and will fight to the death to defend those females. Alpha gorilla or an alpha, I had all of these examples. And then I started looking at the bonobos, and they're closest to us in DNA, and they're doing something a little different, where actually intimacy is shared amongst all of the bonobo clan in a unique way. And then I started looking at other different cultures, like the Himba culture, in which one man will stay behind as all the other men go out and, with their herds, and they'll service all the women, or the Eskimo culture, which is the Inuit culture. Apologies for saying that. I haven't quite gotten that landed in me that you're not supposed to say that word anymore. But the Inuit culture, that culture, has a tradition in which an esteemed chief of another clan would come and be able to share the night with the chief's wife. And then there's other, Tahitian examples. And a lot of this is in Wednesday Martin's Untrue and Christopher Ryan's book, Sex at Dawn. And it started to open my mind to different configurations of intimacy that weren't tilted one direction or another, but allowed like an openness of intimacy. And that led me on my polyamory journey, right? Because I fundamentally realized that I had those desires. Those desires were true. And then I realized, okay, and if you look at the infidelity rates, then they're extraordinarily high. And it's not just men who are cheating, it's women who are cheating as well. I mean, in infidelity, the numbers are similar, actually. And then you look at the steep decline in eros and intimacy that happens after about 2.5 years. The desire for sex starts to kind of disintegrate. And there's a kind of quiet deadness that seeps in, even if there is an infidelity. And I didn't have a lot of good models of relationships that were monogamous that were just like, hell yeah. Now, subsequently, I have found some purely traditional monogamous relationships that are just 10 out of 10. They're stoked. And so I think that it works for, a good amount of people. And I think it's a model that can bring you all the way. And especially if you weave in some tantric technologies and you actually understand how to find novelty at depth rather than novelty in variety. So that's one of the traps, right? Is like, if you don't have the skill to find novelty at depth, because novelty brings a lot of excitement. When you're about to have your first erotic encounter with something, so much excitement, nervousness, excitement, and so much attention being paid and so much eagerness, that happens. You can still find that if you understand how to actually encounter the stranger in your partner, because you're going to ever deeper levels of contact. So this is not a prescriptive thing for everybody, but it's something that I'm offering to open up the possibility of, for you and your unique codes and your partner's unique codes, there are other different possibilities that can exist that can allow you to just absolutely thrive and go to sleep every night knowing that in the relationship vector of your life, you're so blessed, you're so happy, you couldn't possibly be more thrilled with the situation. And that's currently the situation that I'm in. Now, this incredible blessing, it comes with a price. And I started to learn about that price when I went into polyamory. So I was with my partner, Whitney Miller, and we were monogamous. And then after about that 18-month period, we were like, I just don't think I can do this. And I was reading the book Sex at Dawn, and I was like, I think there's another way. I want to try polyamory. And she was like, fuck off, I'm out. And I was like, I love you. I'm sorry that, this isn't going to work for you, but I know this is my truth at that time. And then, so I found another partner and we started dating. And then, Whitney and I stayed close. And then one day we just got back together and she was like, all right, I'm going to give it a go. And then, so we tried it. And I understood philosophically that, also about the nature of love, like knowing God and knowing how God is the infinite intimate, and God can pour all the love into you and all the love into me. And the amount of love that he pours into you does not affect the amount of love that he pours into me. Same as how a mother can have their second child and nobody asks the mother, hey, how does it feel to love your first kid half as much? Like, nobody ever asks that. We understand that love is part of the infinite love. Love participates in the infinite love, and we're a fractal of that infinite love. So there's an abundance of love that goes around. Love is like the sun. It shines on everything. It's not like if it's shining on me, you get less. It's like, it's that powerful. So I had these philosophical underpinnings, and then I was seeing two people, and Whitney wasn't at the time, and she was having a really hard time with it. And looking back, I'm such a fool, and I've made the requisite apologies, to Whitney various times about how callous and insensitive I was, actually, honestly, because I was like, look, we agreed to this. It was very logical. We agreed. This is the fundamental nature of love. And there's no reason why you should be, I don't love you less. Like, I don't know why you're upset. And I was kinder than that, but that's actually like exaggerating
Yeah.
a truth of how, I was a bit insensitive because I hadn't experienced it myself. Then everything turned. Whitney's a firecracker. She's an epic human who's wildly attractive. So she started having lovers.
I remember you shared this
Oh,
and you
oh,
just broke into a thousand
oh.
pieces.
I
Yeah.
wanted to cry
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
vomit and punch things. And like, it was like, it just brought me to my knees. And every time I would imagine a different sexual position or a different, so it was like, it was brutal. But I stayed in the crucible of that until I actually found my way to actually walking the talk and living in a place where I could live in compersion. Like, wow, you had like a great sexual experience. Like, I'm happy for you. And it wasn't like I was batting 100% for that, but I could touch it and I could get to that place where I was really actually happy for her, And another, metaphor I use is, let's say, I was the chef at a restaurant, and, my partner decided that she didn't want to eat at my restaurant every night. She wanted to go get Chinese food. She wanted to go get a sushi bar. Say I had like a contemporary American cuisine, and I was a great chef, Michelin star even, fuck it. But like, if she wants to go get, Thai food, like, yeah, babe, go get Thai food. You eat at my restaurant all the time. Like, I know my food's great. I know you love my food. You'll always come home and there'll be nothing like, the home cooking that I provide. But so we have these ideas about the palate, the nature of the palate, exploring different things, exploring the bounty of this world. So there's a lot of philosophical elements, but for all of the men that are thinking, oh man, Aubrey's got it made, now he's with two women that are beautiful that he loves. And yeah, but they also have lovers. And so there's a price. Like, you have to be able to sit in that fire and bless them as they bless you. And that's the part that when I share that with most men, they're like, yeah, fuck it. Like, I'm not ready for that yet. But that's, I think that's the only way that it can go forward. And that also solves this larger cultural problem. Whereas that instead of men just holding many women in like the Hefner model example, which is like a new model of how this happened. Hefner had 5 blonde playmate girlfriends, but they had a curfew at 9 p.m. and they had to be home and they couldn't see anybody else, right? Like, that's not it. That's not it. And so in this, it's more like different nodes in Indra's net, just like weaving a different pattern where Eros is available. But there's some key rules. And the rules are that everybody who enters your relationship constellation has to leave the garden better than when they found it, right? So you can't have someone that's stirring up drama or implanting bad code or has poor energetic or sexual hygiene or anything. It has to be people who you really trust and are in a shared mission with. And, I found that with Alana and Vailana, and I'm so grateful to Vailana for opening her mind to the possibility. And really, I think it helped her a lot when she found her first lover and understood that she could go see him and have an amazing time playing music and having an incredible night and having, beautiful eros, and then come home and not love me any less. And I didn't love her any less. And then it just opened her mind to the possibility. And Alana has been just an absolute sister to Vi in every moment and an absolute blessing to both of our lives. So now we have this little unit that's like Vailana recently had a vision of, it was in your breath work.
Oh, perfect.
Your breath work,
That
you're
was so
offering
special.
this quantum breath work. Vailana has an unbelievably powerful experience. She has a vision of giving birth to our son, Huxley. And when she gives birth to our son, Huxley, then Alana is there in her vision, placing a haku on Huxley's head, right? Like, because they have this shared Hawaiian connection. So it's not only something that we're choosing, it's something that the vision space and the medicine space and our gnosis with God is saying, actually, this is how it's supposed to be. And I think we have this feeling like this is the truth. This is a clarified true desire. In the lineage of Solomon that I study with Rebbe Gaffney, we talk a lot about clarifying your desire. So berur is the process of clarifying your desire. So if your desire is because, well, I just want to have sex with more people because I feel better about myself. Well, that's not a clarified desire. That's not God's desire that's moving through you. But I really feel like our relationship constellation is the way that actually the divine wants to move through us and wants to actually help raise our children in a way that models two similar but radically different archetypes in Vailana and Alana, and that we're all going to be together in this. And whatever lovers or partners they have, currently they don't have any that are significant at this moment, but I see a world where there are, and that's the uncle and the auntie, and that's this is a world in which children are raised without this kind of. I also think there's an issue with the dominance of a single father figure and a single mother figure. It's a lot of pressure, and of course, the archetype of the father and the mother need to be represented, and both need to be present, right? Like, but also that you can expand it. So many people have such close relationships with a grandma or a grandpa or other people in the nuclear family, but that's a little bit like the lottery. You got to kind of get lucky to have a good nuclear family. But if it's your chosen family, your ohana, you can create an environment in which, I really feel like our children are going to grow up in a place of radical love, like a transcendence of the jealousy and the separation and a real worship of the power of that erotic impulse that moves through and creates life. So, it's kind of a long-winded story about how I got to where I am now, but I can really rest in knowing that this is not only my personal separate self-desire, but this is a divine desire that's moving through all of us. And, and again, the final thing I'll say is the key is that you have to be dead straight honest. Dead straight honest.
You hear that?
Like
radical.
At this point, when you're actually extending beyond convention, you cannot navigate those waters with any distortion. You have to say it exactly like it is. And I think that's another one of the challenges in relationships. Everybody's whispering lies, sweet little lies to each other all the time. Like, are you thinking about that girl? No, baby, I'm not. Like, what I see you looking at Jason Tatum, playing basketball. Well, you think you like him? Would you hook up with him? And like, no, I wouldn't hook up with Jason Tatum. Never. I mean, people are full of shit. They're just lying to each other. Even if they're not acting on it, there's like dishonesty that's happening, whether it's pornography or whether it's Instagram or whether it's whatever else. You're engaging in these things. But if you're in a construct like this, you can just speak openly as you would with your best friend. And, and so there's not this split between like, okay, here's this story and this inauthentic life that I'm living with my partner. And here's the true life that I'm living with my friends, where I tell them actually what's true because they won't judge me. It's just now your partner, the person you're spending the most time with, or your partners, they know the truth of everything. So there's nothing hidden. So the space between you becomes less than zero, because there's no split between your inner mind and your outer mind, or as in the Japanese culture, your inner heart and your outer heart.
So then we start with radical honesty.
Yeah.
And we may risk losing some people that we love and certainly pissing some people off, but it's at least a step in the right direction. And we can continue with that. I love this because it's scary.
Yeah.
I get it. I totally get it. But I've been on this path for a long time. But like you, I feel like I'm choked if I'm not expressing.
Right.
if I'm not really being me. So I've got a lot to learn, but I'm on the right path. You touched on the breathwork. I had
Hmm.
the privilege of sharing quantum breathwork with your inner circle here, your round table. Your mum was there. What a
Hmm.
blessing. Vi was there. So many people breathed, and you helped facilitate. It was beautiful to see you work. How was your experience with the breath?
I think that, I've been a part of many breathworks and I've learned from a lot of great masters. And I was really excited to see how you worked in the space because I had an instinct that you were going to be doing something that was a bit different than the breathworks that I facilitated. And I was in a supportive role facilitating you, which is beautiful. And I really, really enjoyed that. And I've played that role for Anahata Ananda and Lucas Mack and Wim Hof and, many of the great practitioners. And a lot of them are similar. They have different styles, or holotropic breathing is its own different, vector. But there's a couple things I noticed about your breath work. One, the energy field you set, which is your unique signature, was just pristine and beautiful, and so I really want to commend you on that. You had people adhere to a cadence where everybody was breathing synchronistically. And that was something that was novel. That was something that I hadn't experienced before, where everybody was breathing at the same pace, right? So it created a group coherence that I think was a little different. A lot of times breath works without that, it's like popcorn popping off. It's like, this one's going, okay, there's an exorcism happening over here, and then there's an orgasm happening over here, and then there's like all kinds of, and that's beautiful. And I'm not knocking it that way, but it's a different thing. This created an interesting coherence where people were somewhat together. And I think that was one of the factors. And then also you wove in some elements, some metaphysical elements that are also physical about how the places that you squeeze like your perineum and the lower energy kundalini generating centers, and you push that energy all the way through your pineal and your crown. And I think for Vi, that's what actually helped her unlock that higher vision space, was actually the movement of the energy through the breath into expanding and opening through the crown. So it was beautiful to just see it work in that way and allow it to offer that invitation and opening to that visionary space, which was just beautiful to watch.
Thank you. Thank you for facilitating as well. It was an honor when Vi shared. That was so cool. Walking
Yeah,
through there.
totally.
So we'll see when the little one arrives.
Yeah.
I want to quickly talk about Yeshua.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so for context, I think many people have been, conditioned, to say the least, by religion. I grew up where we went to church, but I didn't want to go because it was forced and it was within certain frameworks and so on and so forth. So I considered myself spiritual. And at the same time, I felt, not that I was, but I felt disconnected because I thought it had to be in a certain way. Same as what we just discussed before in regards to relationships and other things. Now we're coming into a new realization. We're driving here on the way to the studio. We're listening to some stuff in regards to Yeshua, the Christ consciousness that in most divine, that often comes through in the breath, by the way. I have a lot of people sharing that. Jesus came through, he was here, and I was him, or he held my hand, or, the angels were here, whatever. What's your understanding of Christ consciousness and the beauty that I think is returning that may have been tainted?
Mm-hmm.
It's going to help a lot of people having this conversation. What are your thoughts?
My thoughts are really based on, so much of my religious and theological belief is based on personal experience. So I've had several personal encounters in the psychedelic space with Yeshua, and it helped me really understand. So I'll go through those first, and then I'll extrapolate. And everything beyond that are just ideas. But I trust actually the gnosis more than the ideas. But I like exploring the ideas. It's fun. So gnosis number one, I was in a ceremony opening up a dieta with the plant rose, and I was being guided by a shaman, and he sung an Icaro, and he called in Christ. And I'm on the medicine, and Christ appears as this column of emerald light.
Mm.
And of course, green is the color of the heart chakra, right? So this column, but I wasn't thinking about that. I just actually put that together later. But this column of emerald light, and I had this overwhelming feeling that that emerald light could perceive every aspect of myself. And there was nothing that could stay hidden. I was completely permeable. And so there was this instinct of, oh, I got to hide these parts. Like here's Christ. Like, fuck, like I got a lot that is like, I got to kind of protect from this being. But the energy was like, no matter what I see, I will not flinch. Like I have a love that doesn't forgive you. It holds no record of wrong. It doesn't even wobble or waver no matter what you show me. Right. And I think that's a big difference between forgiveness and not even recording the wrong itself. It's like you're pre-forgiven because there is nothing that could actually change the opinion. Like forgiveness means you did something bad, but I am going to be generous enough to forgive you. That's not the energy that I experienced from Christ. It was like that I couldn't possibly offend that being. I couldn't possibly do something in which that would alter the love. That's true unconditional love. And it was the first, I had that modeled really beautifully from my mother, but it was the first time in the psychedelic space where I could really feel like, oh, this is unconditional love. It's a love that holds no record of wrong. Doesn't even notice it. It doesn't alter it at all. Had another encounter with Yeshua this time, who didn't appear as a column of emerald light, but was just sitting over my shoulder in a DMT journey. And I just had this, he was just sitting there quietly. And I just had this feeling like it was almost like a confession. And I confessed all my vulnerabilities, all my struggles, all my challenges, all the places where I'd fallen short, everything that I was like wrestling with, and all of the places where I held judgment for myself. And I was just going on and on and on, confessing. And I just felt compelled to do it. It wasn't like I had a religious doctrine. I grew up really a-religious, but it just came naturally out of me. And Christ just sat there lovingly, and just, I could feel and see in the vision space and lean in. And he just says, me too. I was like, fuck.
Oh.
And that was like, it's still like, brings tears to my eyes when I remember that moment, because it wasn't like there was this, I am up here and you're down here. I am the high and holy one and you're this lowly worm, right? Which I think is one of the distortions that we've created, this big separation. Again, going back to Ahom and Takavie or Yasin, like we are all related. Like Christ was willing to come down and say, me too. Like all your struggles are my struggles. Everything you've experienced, I've experienced too. And here I am, loving you as a model, as something to point to. There's a Latin phrase, imitatio Christi, like to imitate the Christ. But I think to imitate the Christ, there was those bracelets, what would Jesus do? But I don't think we understand the level of love that Yeshua and the Christ consciousness that he embodied, what that actually means. It's like trying to grasp infinity. We live in a world of judgment, and there's a necessity for, and I would make the distinction between discernment and judgment. Judgment is the removal of love based on a judgment of a certain action. Discernment is saying, okay, here's a boundary, and I love myself enough that I'm going to hold this boundary, or I'm going to protect those that I love. I'm going to hold this boundary. So I think Christ to me represents, my model for love is the rose. And I spoke about the rose dieta, which was the first time I encountered Christ. And Christ represents the flower. The flower gives its scent to everybody. If you have but the patience and the time, its radiance, its beauty, its scent, its color. I mean, everybody loves getting a rose. And everybody, who has just a little bit of attention will smell the rose and just feel the petals and appreciate it. And it offers its bloom to everybody. But in our third dimensional density, and this is as you travel down the stem from the rose, there's the thorns. And the thorns, they're not going out there hunting people. They're not on an inquisition. They're just saying, we're here to protect the flower. We're here to protect the flower. You shall not trample me. Like I'm here to protect the flower. And I think that's the model that I use to love. And Christ holds, the key part of that, which is the flower, but also there's a place for the discernment of the thorn. And then also traveling down the rose, there's the roots that stretch down deep into the earth and our connection to our mother, our shared mother. And there's the leaves that open themselves to receive the energy of the sun. And then there's the bush, the bushel of roses, all of your sacred allies, your ohana, your ride or die friends and brothers, like what we've had in the round table. There's a whole gathering of people. And so the rose really, exemplifies this model of love. And Yeshua, he holds the energy of the flower. And that's the unconditional love that I think is available for us. And he paved the way. He opened up that possibility in human form. Where that came from, how he was able to get there. Was he just a man like any of us? Or did he have some, special star being lineage that came through? I don't know the answer to that. I think in some ways it's a cooler story if he was just a normal guy with a calling, and he just went and traveled all the mystery schools and he unlocked it himself, because it paves an even greater possibility for us to walk the same path. But either way, it doesn't matter. He's that, Yeshua and the Christ consciousness he embodied, it holds such a crucial piece for our understanding of spirituality. And it's a shame that there's two camps. Some people who have been kind of like, they're like allergic to Jesus. They're like, oh, I don't want any of this Christian stuff, and I don't want any of this church stuff because it's been jammed down their throat. And there's been lots of fear and sin and guilt and idolatry and all of these different things associated. And then there's the other side who are, in the more fundamentalist camp, which is, I just don't agree with those fundamentalist interpretations. And whenever I'm in a tough spot in a medicine journey and I really need help, the first number in my contact book, my spiritual astral contact book is Yeshua. Like Yeshua, like, please, like, I need some help, and, it doesn't always appear in the grand way that he's appeared sometimes, but that energy is always there, and it's always available to like tap into that. And I think it really represents who we can be at our best. And, in relationships, in life, especially with somebody who, I think a lot of times you can really transcend the need for the thorns anymore, and you can just be the flower. You can just be the rose petals. And so I think he plays a crucial role. And I think one of the aspects of my path as I move forward is to try and integrate this larger Christ into, so that because everybody should love Christ. Really. Like Christ exemplifies like the highest form of love. Like it should be universal, and I really actually appreciate many of the ayahuasca traditions who've brought Christ into their pantheon. Many, even Maestro Alberto, who's the teacher that I'm working with currently. It's like Christ is a big part of his altar and a big part of his work. And, And, it's kind of the big dog in the space. Like, that's the thing that clears all distortion. And that's the ally that you can call on. It doesn't mean the other allies aren't great as well. You can call on Michael or Gabriel or Kali or whoever else you want to call on. But like, to me, and when they say Christ is king, I'm like, yeah, no doubt. He's, I mean, like, you want some support, Christ is king.
I love that. It's interesting. For me, I feel like it's kind of been externalized a lot, so there's two hypotheses that I've been looking at. One is Christ, is an external being. He will return in physical form. And when he returns, so this is the standard, the school of thought. When he returns in physical form, then we will be saved. So, okay, that may be the case. The other school of thought is, which is going to piss some people off, what if Christ is within us? It's riddled throughout the Bible. Where I am, you are also. What I can do, you can also do.
Yeah, you shall do more and greater.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so then, what are your thoughts? I mean, we're not projecting here. I'm just, kind of exploring. Because we have the outside Christ.
Yeah.
When he comes back, we will be saved by the Savior. And we have Christ is a living field of divine, radiant love that exists within all of us. And if we can tune into that, become one with that, live like that, we can bring heaven on earth. What are your thoughts?
So I'll go to two different other teachings that aren't in the Christian tradition. So in the Hindu tradition, there's this idea that Atman is Brahman.
Yeah.
So Brahman is the all that is, the everything, the source, the creator, right? Brahman is the creator. And then Atman is our personal piece of the creator, this center of centers that lives inside of us. And there's a teaching that Atman is Brahman. And Rumi echoes this in the quote that we are not a drop in the ocean, we're the ocean in a drop.
Yeah.
So there is no doubt that Christ consciousness lives within us. Undeniably for me. Like, I know that to be true.
Yeah,
now, who has the dedication and the ability and the destiny to actually fulfill the possibility of just going full Christ and being willing to bear the consequences of that? I don't know when or how or what, but I imagine that there won't just be one Christ. I imagine there'll be many who actually take that path as consciousness evolves. There'll be many beings that will actually achieve Christ consciousness. Now, that doesn't mean that they're going to be Jesus. Jesus was a unique figure that accessed the fullness of Christ consciousness. But even still, the Bible shows us moments of doubt. God, why have you forsaken me? Right? Like, there's a humanness still in there, which I think is important. Like, there's the struggles and the challenges that he experienced. I think that's a forgotten part of the story. And I wish there was more parts of the story. I wish we had podcasts with him on it so he could talk about his struggles, or like during those 40 days in the desert, like what was your hardest moment? When did you think you couldn't make it through? When did Hasatan, when did that, the force that I call anti-you in my upcoming book, when did that force get the better of you? And I would love to ask those questions. And of course, fundamentalists are going to be like, never. Who's always killing it, always, Yeah. And maybe, but I don't see it that way personally. I think he was, he had to walk the path to be amongst us so he could show us the possibility of what we're capable of, so that we can, imitatio Christi, we can try to walk a similar path. Now, to walk that path, it's such a great commitment. Like, we were just with Chief Bearcross, and he's bound by a dream where if anybody asks him for help, he has to say yes. And I think walking the Christic path is like, you also have to say yes. I once asked my good friend, Ted Decker, who's a Christian mystic, and I asked, okay, if Jesus was climbing up a cold mountain, say in Nepal or somewhere, he traveled all over, so not even impossible that this happened. So he was climbing up a cold mountain. and he had a jacket or a covering on that was keeping him warm, and he was at high enough elevation, and a storm came through, and there was some other person, just an ordinary person who was freezing. Would Christ give that person his coat, his garb, and because obviously, Jesus must have known the purpose that he had, and he could easily justify, like, look, and he would die if he did this. So I created this thought experiment where he would die. There was no like, we'll huddle together and we'll ride it through. Like, it was one or the other. So I created like this kind of false binary. And I was like, would Christ do it? And Ted said, yes, he would. Because that's the nature of being the Christ. So he would have quietly died in the cold on that mountain, knowing that he saved that one life. And I think that's something that people don't understand. It's like, even if you could, would you? Like, would you for real? Would you bear the cost of actually doing that? And so question one, could you? Question two, would you? And, as I look at my life, like, the answer to both of those questions is like, I don't think so. Like, I don't think I could, although I have touched levels that are wild where I've felt that energy momentarily, but it's usually with the support of medicines and the support of sacred rituals. But so the question of could is super dubious, and I'm lean towards, I don't think so. And then the question of would is also like pretty clearly like, nah, I don't think so. Like, I don't think I'm ready for that level of responsibility. And I think I say this because I think this is a question all of us can ask, like, could you and would you? And, I don't think there's many who could or would, but I think there will be some, and again, this is super heretical. There are going to be a bunch of people pissed off, but I think like all of us have the Christ that lives within us, and trying to actually go into our deepest heart of hearts and say, like, could you? Maybe. Would you? Maybe. But if someone is like a full yes in both of those, I think they'll have the support to actually embody that in that unique signature. And I believe that maybe not in our lives, but I believe at some point consciousness will evolve to such a point where there'll be those who reach that level of consciousness and love.
And in the meantime, let's not make it so black or white. We could just say, hey, let's live more like that.
Totally.
Let's
exactly. Like
that.
walk
Walk
a little closer.
Yeah.
Like allow it to be like the star in the night sky, that you're just like all like deep bow, like deep reverence, like deep humility, and say like, I'm going to walk a little closer to this path. And that's one of the beauties that I see in this kind of Christian revival is, I see some of the old kind of witch hunt mechanisms and some of the like the harsh words and the non-exemplification of what I understand Christ to be. So I see some of that, but I also see a lot of people who are genuinely trying to be the best person they can be.
Yeah.
So, I really respect and appreciate that. And, I respect, other people's beliefs, and, they may not respect mine, but, fundamentally, like, I really do. And that's also what's been really nice about my conversations with Father Sean O'Leary, because we really are aligned in so much of that. And he was a priest for 45 years, was eventually excommunicated from the church because he had a vision of Christ as a bigger being. But, when we spoke to him recently, he shared that in his hardest moments at near death, he would sing hymns in his old Gaelic tongue, and Christ would be there singing hymns with him, and it would carry him through. And he knows that when he dies, like, Christ will be there to walk arm in arm with him across the threshold. And so his relationship with Christ is unparalleled. And he also shares this vision of a bigger Christ, like an even bigger Christ. It's like, let's make Christ, I don't want to make Christ smaller. I want to make Christ bigger.
Mm.
And not bigger in a hierarchical sense, but bigger in a vaster, more accessible, like broader sense that's universal to all. So there's more commonality actually in what I believe and the fundamentalists believe than they realize. And I hope that, as my life moves forward, that I can help guide more people to really appreciating and having a living connection
Mm.
with Christ.
Beautiful.
And also, here's the other trap. Nobody is Yeshua. Yeshua was a unique being.
Mm-hmm.
I've had far too many people, unstable people, say, like, "Hey, I just want to let you know, like, I'm that guy." And I'm like, "Oh no, what guy?" And they're like, "Well, the guy." And I'm like, "No, what guy?" And they're like, and they're like, "Jesus." And I'm like, "No, no, no, not it." Like, not it. Sorry, mad blessings, but not it. Like, Yeshua he's unique. We're all unique. There's not going to be another Yeshua, but there will be other unique beings that embody the Christ consciousness. Yeshua was one of one, fucking one of one. Nobody's going to be him.
Amen. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
So two things we've just heard. One is in regards to relationships. So make sure you go to the Aubrey Marcus podcast and check out the newest episode that just dropped in regards to your relationship dynamic. Two, the Aubrey Marcus podcast again and your interviews with Father Sean Allaire.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. It gave me such a breath of fresh air because it took me out of the conditioning of the standard way of looking at it, and it gave me so much permission. I interviewed him recently. I asked him about the energy systems, the chakra systems. Oh, he goes, yeah. But we're having full-on conversations. I'm like, this is such a breath of fresh air because I'll take, some from the Vedic lineage and the chakra systems, and I'll take some from the Buddhic traditions and the middle way, and I'll take, the essence of Christ and those teachings, and I'll just embody it. It just feels right for me. It feels good.
Sure.
So I love that. Okay, let's change up a little bit. We've got a couple more questions, then we've got to wrap up. What's a question that you've never been asked that is important to ask at this time?
Well, I think the thing that's coming to me is, what have your challenges been with the medicine path? Like, because I talk a lot about the benefits and the beauty.
The shadow side of it?
The shadow side of it.
Yeah, let's go there. Okay. Great question.
Yeah.
Now the answer, please.
Yeah. So when I discovered ketamine as it's classically a dissociative, but it's a very powerful compound. And at first I was kind of like, I don't know if I like this or if I don't like this, but pretty soon I started to understand how to work with it. And then, so I was working with it and experiencing profound psychedelic experiences. Then I discovered that if you combined it with cannabis, it would create this somatic connection that opened up, like ketamine feels like it melts the veils of your consciousness and allows you to actually connect to a greater capital M mind. But then if you have enough cannabis, your body or psilocybin, but particularly cannabis, then you'll bring your body's intelligence with you, and then you'll be able to like unlock parts. Like I had these like auto jaw releases and these crazy somatic experiences, as well as like unbelievably powerful downloads and explorations of the nature of consciousness. So I started this kind of very sacred path of working with those medicines in combination. And then I started to get a little sloppy. Ketamine, unlike most of these other medicines, and cannabis can be like this too, but it feels really good. There's no real cost, right? Like ayahuasca is uncomfortable. It's it's work.
Yep.
Psilocybin, even for me, it's work. Like you got to work through stuff. You got to like deal with things that are difficult. And iboga, I mean, it's the most uncomfortable thing I've ever done in my life. 24 hours of just unbearable discomfort, but unbelievable clarity and insight, right? Wachuma, same. It's like feels really good, but it's also subtly so challenging.
I just find so much love with Wachuma.
I do too. And
Grace.
and
Oh.
I find myself presented with like subtle challenges from the grandfather, where a grandfather will say, "What are you going to do about this?"
Uh-huh.
And I'll be like, "I don't know." And I'll have to navigate different. It's a subtle teacher, but it is quite pleasant. But also, you're tired the next day, and
Yeah.
like it's a lot of energy that you have to put in, a lot of focus, a lot of time you have to carve out, a lot of, so there's, although it does feel better than the other medicines, I'll
A
say.
lot more gentle
Oh
than
yeah,
grandmother.
for sure. But with ketamine, it just feels good. So despite, years, I mean, it's been 27 years I've been on the sacred medicine path. Sometime around 2022, 23, there would be these moments of sloppiness where I would just do ketamine for the fun of it.
You just sold on it at that time, right?
Yeah.
2021, 22.
Yeah. So, and
a lot of
then,
money.
yeah. And
Freedom.
and like, it's not that there weren't still benefits that would come and insights that would come. So I could always justify it. But it got to a point where actually I realized, oh, like this is making me less productive, making me a little bit less clear in my mind. It's actually taking more than it's giving me. And I think that, I recently wrote a newsletter about this, that's the first time I've ever had a struggle with a substance, because it's not like I've never done drugs. I've done drugs. I don't particularly like most drugs. I like medicines, but
big difference. Drugs and medicine.
Yeah.
Now people call it a drug. It's no. There is a medicine and then there's a drug.
Yeah.
There's a big difference here. Let's be clear. If it's a thousands of year old tradition from an ancient cactus that carries opportunities for you to connect with spirit in a ceremonial, ritual based sense, I don't consider it a drug. I don't care what you call it.
Right.
But if you go out and having, a line on the weekend, there's a different story. So let's be clear. There's a medicine and there's a drug. I just wanted to drop that in there. Go ahead.
Yeah, totally. And I also think that drugs can be medicines. Like I remember so I'll give an example of drugs being medicines. The first time I did Bufo, which is an unbelievable medicine, it was facilitated to me in combination with 350 milligrams of MDMA.
Oh.
And I had a great experience. However, it dysregulated my nervous system to such a degree that I was going on 3 days without sleep. And because it was just so much, it just like fried the system.
5-MeO in itself is intense.
It's
You're going
intense.
to throw MDMA in there as well.
And especially at that dose. I mean, the MAPS clinical dose is between 80 and 120 milligrams. So I was like 3x the clinical dose of MDMA. And I didn't know what I was doing. And then the Bufo. So I was really wildly dysregulated. And it was like, and I was trying a bunch of things, trying breath work and trying cold plunge and trying like different things to try and get my body to calm down, meditation. Nothing was working. And then finally I was like, I think I just need a drink. Like I need to pour myself a glass of whiskey and, hold my partner's hand. And I drank that glass of whiskey and my nervous system started to calm down and my brain started to stop spinning and I started to get sleepy. And then, like a big hug and a kiss, and I went to the bedroom and I slept for 12 hours, right? So whiskey, it's a drug. And that day, that time, it was a medicine. So drugs can be medicines, and medicines, ketamine was a medicine for me. It can be a drug. And so I fell into the path of using a medicine as a drug. And and that was really like an important realization for me, to realize that even with all the work I've done, even with all the awareness I have, I was still vulnerable. And I see this as something that we're going to have to grapple with in this world, because ketamine it's so attractive because there's a lot of things. One, it drops you into like waking delta brainwave states. So it's net restorative to like your actual, like, because when you drop into any kind of lower brainwave states, whether it's theta or delta, there's a restorative quality. That's why after meditation, you feel like you've been through a long nap, but it does that manually. It manually drives your brainwave states down into a much slower pattern. So you end up with this surplus, but you keep doing it and it starts to dig deeper into the dopamine pathway. And it became like, if you've watched Fellowship of the Ring or, Rings of Power, the new series, the dwarves that dug too deep, they got too greedy.
Yep.
And they awakened Balrog.
Yeah.
And I could start to see the tendrils of Balrog come up.
Good on you.
And so I just want to share that. This it's a part of my own fallibility. And it's an important story to share because I think, this medicine has a powerful potential, and it has, in my mind, one of the most significant risks for addiction of any of the other medicines that I've seen. And I think we really need to be mindful of that. And it's also now, because of its decriminalized status, it's easily available to get from, a variety of different doctors and sources beyond just the dealer market that it's in. So I have never talked about that on a podcast, but
thank you.
It's been a personal challenge, and I can, see it echoed through many, many individuals and so it's just a cautionary tale, and it's a cautionary tale from someone who can now look at anybody who's having that experience and go, yeah, me too. Me too.
Well said. Closing the loop.
Yeah.
There's an old saying, what's the difference between drugs and poison? Respect, ritual, and dosage. Might take that into consideration in the medicine world.
Yeah. 100%.
Okay, so the shadow side of the medicine/drugs is it a vice? Is it something that's becoming something that's for entertainment or feel good or escapism? Or is it a sacred ritual?
Yeah.
So people often ask, I started my medicine journey in 2016, said over 100 ceremonies now, not close to the experience that you've got, but we're getting somewhere. And it's been a beautiful journey. People ask, when am I ready for plant medicine? Is it now? Is it later? And I normally say, maybe you'll want to add to this, I normally say, when the sacred sacraments find you and it comes to you in a synchronistic way and it feels right for you, and you can tell that the community, the shamans, the wisdom keepers, the people that carry the medicine are authentic within their lineage and they hold a beautiful sacred space, it may be something that you're called to do, but you don't go out and do it on the weekend. Right? So it's like, it comes often to you when you're ready. And I know, like, for example, Drink the Jungle, I think is an amazing place to start. So if you guys haven't checked it out, it's on YouTube. It's called Drink the Jungle. It's a documentary he did some years ago on ayahuasca. Blew me away. Love it. And the way the visuals are done, very accurate. Like grandmother's with you. I saw it. I'm like, ooh, I'm in the medicine right now.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that when it comes to, when is there a time for medicine? And by that, I mean plant medicine, sacred sacrament.
I think people need to get comfortable with endogenous altered states of consciousness first.
Yeah, I love that.
Like, this is what I recommend. I can recommend this universally, like to everybody, whoever you are. Do breath work.
Exactly.
Like, do shamanic breath work. And not just, box breathing and whatever. There's lots of forms of pranayama. But
transformational type breathing.
Exactly.
Techniques.
Breath work is a key one.
Yeah.
Find a sensory deprivation tank. It's hard for a lot of people to meditate and get to the deeper places that you can get. But the sensory deprivation tank really facilitates you getting into a deeply meditative state. do ecstatic dance.
Ah.
Like do ecstatic dance. Find yourself in that state of superfluidity and trance, and go on those journeys. I ran Fit for Service for 6 years. Every single one of our events, we always did breath work. We always did ecstatic dance because we did many other things, little soul wanders on the land and little mini vision quests and all these other things. There are so many beautiful paths, but get used to altered states of consciousness without any exogenous medicines. Use step one.
I love that. This is very, very important.
Yeah.
And endogenous meaning, obviously, that the brain, you can create it inside. You can have a DMT experience from breathing,
right,
rather than an exogenous experience we have with having the bufo or the
right,
ayahuasca or whatever. Yeah.
And breathwork can carry a similar depth.
Yeah. We saw that just the other day.
I mean, Vi's vision, right? That was an ayahuasca level vision.
Yeah.
And she got that from breathwork.
Half an hour breathing.
But the great advantage of it is that if your experience is too intense, just breathe through your nose. It's something you shared, something that I share. It's like you're in control. No other medicine do you have your foot right on the gas pedal and the brakes. Like you actually decide you want a bigger experience, breathe deeper, breathe heavier, like go for it. You want a lighter experience, back off. So there's some responsibility with it. That's why guided breath work, I think, is so important. Yeah. It's difficult to do it on your own. I would also say, like, get used to uncomfortable situations. So sweat lodge is another way that you can actually temper yourself. Can you sit in the sweat when it's so hot that you don't think you're going to make it, but you find your prayer and you make it through?
We did in Colorado, it was hot, man.
It was hot. I mean, I had a rock burn. I literally, like, my skin had like a little sunburn. It was so hot.
Like, stop breathing, or
yeah, it's like, it's crazy. And all good sweats are bring you right to that balance of this is the right amount of heat so that you can find yourself and you can know yourself as someone who can make it through. And cold is the same way. So using hot and cold. So fasting, another great way. Can you control your impulses? Are you the master of your soul, the captain of your destiny?
Do you have dominion over your flesh?
Yeah, exactly.
Are you addicted to food? I am. But at what point are you going to take dominion over your flesh and say, no, I will not eat today. I will fast. And day 3, oh my God.
Yeah.
It's like having mushrooms.
I know.
So powerful.
I know. It's amazing. So fasting, great. Another great example of ways that you can actually put yourself in a situation where you have to come up against yourself. And because in the medicines, it will put you in these uncomfortable situations. So the more that you can trust yourself in those type of situations, then I think that's when you're really ready. And then everything that you said is right. Like, respond to a true calling. Make sure that the people that you're dealing with are the right people. You got to look at all of these shamans like psychic surgeons. If you were going to get really important critical surgery, you would want to make sure you're with a good doctor. You'd want to talk to the doctor. You'd want to get some fucking reports about other patients that the doctor's been through. You want to fucking look at the Yelp reviews or whatever it is, right? You want to know you're with a good doctor if they're going to open you up. And I think shamans and facilitators, they're psychic surgeons. And so not only do you need the right doctor, but then you also, like any surgery, you need to carve out the time for recovery, which is your integration.
Yeah, big.
So, but I think it's true, like the medicine will, through the kind of the kismet, the divine synchronicity, God working in you, as you, through you, and beyond you, your soul conspiring to help you in every moment, it will lead you to, find the right way. And, there's a lot of great, there's a lot of great facilitators, but not enough that I know of personally that I can recommend to everybody. But, I can say that, Soltara is a place that I trust. The shamans that I've worked with, Maestro Orlando, Maestro Alberto for ayahuasca, they're incredible. There's a couple Ibogaine clinics, that are open up, a new one called Beyond that's, has really great reports about it. And
here in the US?
Ambio and Beyond, no, in Mexico. And so, there's, for the big ones, there's some, good good sources. And but you just have to be careful, because it's not only competence when you're dealing with a shaman, it's also integrity.
Yeah, big time.
And there's extractive sorcerers, basically brujas that will
Totally.
can actually really fuck you up. And
Hayokas in disguise.
yeah,
Yeah, crazy, huh?
although Hayokas are serving a greater purpose beyond themselves, but they're just serving themselves. They're harvesting your money, they're harvesting your energy, they're playing out these kind of power games. So you have to be careful. But nonetheless, like if you can kind of vet it and know the right places and people, and the medicine will find you for sure.
Life changing. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and it'll change. You'll change your life. And that's another thing to remember. The medicine doesn't change your life. The medicine gives you the clarity and the authority for you to change your life. So any decision you make after psychedelics, you're making it, you know? So like you're doing it. Don't forget that. Like,
just don't make the decision on the day.
Yeah,
Give it a couple of days.
totally. Because, there's, you reach
divorced today.
Yeah.
Maybe, but maybe a couple of days.
Totally.
I love, I noticed that there was a lot of powerful spiritual people, and they weren't tuning into the highest frequency. So one of the things that I share with my students is, okay, there's a lot of powerful spiritual teachers out there, shamans, shamanistas. There's a lot of different people, like gurus, right? And I think the question is, do I intuitively feel like they're working with the highest light? Is this a pure transmission? Is this unconditional love? Do they want something from me?
Yeah.
Or is it just that there is that love? And I think that's that spiritual attunement. It's been very, very useful for me. A couple of things I want to really give our audience here. You're coming out with a new book soon. Own the Day, I think, was the first one. Loved it. Awesome. But this is a whole new level. You and to you. Love the like that, even the graphic of that.
Yeah.
Tell us about this book.
If you imagine that actually you know what your potential is and what you should do and what your best is. So imagine that. And then imagine how you live. There'll be a delta.
Yeah.
There'll be a difference. How does that make sense? How does it make sense that you don't do everything you know that you should do that's best for you? How does that even fucking make sense? Right? Like, it's you know what you should do, you're not doing it. Why? And there's psychological reasons, there's biological reasons. You can reduce it to that. But there's a force that's actually working against us. And it's our natural opponent. And it's here actually at the highest level for our evolution, as iron sharpens iron, right? Like it's the opponent that actually we can test our metal against to expand and to grow in evolution. But don't get it twisted. The opponent is trying to fuck you up.
Yeah.
And in all the great traditions, they have a name for this. And so in, obviously the Christian tradition, Hasatan, or Satan, the deceiver, the father of lies, like whispering those lies in your ear, taking you from the righteous path. In Kabbalist faith, there's Sitra Akra, the other side, the turning of the face from God, this energy that's actually, working against you. In psychological, circles, like, so Phil Stutz is a famous psychiatrist, and he talks about part X. Stephen Pressfield, the great writer, wrote the book The War of Art, and he talks about capital R resistance. So from all the great traditions, and I could list many more, Native American traditions, it's called Wetiko, this force, and that Paul Levy describes as the mind virus. In the Toltec traditions of Don Juan and Don Miguel Ruiz, they'll call it the predator or the parasite. We have to take this force seriously and not be afraid, like, it's not about fear.
And this
but
is
it's
the
just
anti-you.
This is the anti-you.
Yeah.
And so I've just combined all of this into a personal name, the anti-you. So there's your personal anti-you. There's the anti-Espen. There's the anti-Aubrey, which is your personal opponent. And if you see, like in many of the great martial arts sagas, the final battle is them battling themselves.
Yeah.
right? It's always them battling
Bruce Lee
themselves.
said the same thing.
Yeah. And
That's your
so,
enemy. Your enemy is your own fear. And
right.
yeah.
So we understand this. It shows up in our stories. It shows up in myths like Star Wars. It shows up, where Ren's fighting Ren, like it shows up in all of these different paths. And there's, the light side and the dark side of the force. And that's just how the cosmic battery works. There's what I call the field and the void. And the void is the one that sucks light like a black hole. And the field is the one that, let there be light like the divine. And they work together to create this cosmic battery. This is if you listen to my podcast with Nassim Haramein, we talk about how this forms this cosmic battery of the black hole and the emission of light. It's all working on all the different dimensional levels. In some, it's in the amoral space. A black hole's not bad and the sun's not good. That's just it's just aspects of the cosmos. But when it comes down into the physical form, one is working against you and one is working for you, but both are actually working for you as the one creator that's just divided itself into polarity. It's
in 3D. They're going to be
exactly. It's here to fuck you up.
Yeah.
And so it's one, establishing and giving a name to this force, just calling it anti-you. Two, I get to go through my model of the self, which takes some Freudian ideas, takes some spiritual ideas, and kind of weaves a 7-part model of the self. 7-part model of the self, 7-dimensional cosmos, and then 13 moves that you can make to defeat the inner opponent and master the game of life.
Moves. I like that.
13
I
moves.
love that you created moves.
Yeah.
So it's like martial arts.
Yeah. And so like one of the moves we talked about it is love like the rose. Right. So and it talks about the Christic element of Christ being like the flower, but the necessity of holding the thorns and connecting to the earth and holding your leaves to the sun. And so there's spiritual ideas. There's the story of, my father who is defeated by anti-you in the end, like his own inner demons actually took over his life and he died isolated and alone. So it's
same
one
with my
part.
dad, bro.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's still alive, but he's just doesn't want to see anyone, just sits at home by himself, watching TV, getting indoctrinated, completely stuck in pain.
I'm sorry, brother. I'm sorry. So it's a combination of, I really feel like this is my opus because it's one part of it. It's me as Inigo Montoya, like my name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father, prepare to die, from Princess Bride. Like there's this personal story. There's my own struggles and challenges. And then there's really my models, my model of the self. Who are you? One of the first great questions of cosmoerotic humanism. Who are you? Where are you? So who are you? The model, the team of the self. Where are you? The 7-dimensional cosmos. What is there to do? The 13 moves.
Boom. Okay. Coming out soon?
I don't know. Actually, the manuscript is incredible and it's really close. We should have the manuscript done by May 31st. I'm exploring publishing options.
Yeah, cool.
So I may self-publish if I find the right partner. I may publish conventionally, and those two timelines will change. So it'll either be the fall. If I'm publishing myself, I can get it out in the fall. If probably a traditional publisher, they take a little bit more time just to get it through their system. So it'd probably be the spring of 26.
Cool. In the meantime, we've got the Aubrey Marcus podcast. We've got Drink the Jungle. We've got Own the Day. And we've got, the Aubrey Marcus podcast in itself is just a whole universe.
Thank you, brother.
Of magic. I honestly, it is gorgeous. I mean, why listen to the radio and ads when you can listen to spiritual attuned technology and wisdom that's been, through experience? So again, nothing better or worse, but I find it incredible. So thank you for doing it.
You're welcome, brother. You're welcome. It's been one of the great joys of my life because, I always show up, and I think this is anybody who I respect shows up as a student, no matter how much you know.
Yeah.
So you always keep the student mentality, and you also stand for that which you know. So because of my 27 years of psychedelic experience, I've felt things and understood things that somebody like Nassim Haramein can explain. And I can be like, oh, that's just like when I felt this. And then he'd be like, exactly. Or Father Sean, or all these great masters. So I think that's, one of the things I enjoy the most is when I get to cross-reference ideas that have come through me through the process of self-exploration and then see someone who's flushed out the whole, the whole spectrum of ontology of why that's real and what it means and what the right language is. So it's been a beautiful ride, but thank you for your kind words. And
True words.
yeah.
Aho, brother.
Aho.
Absolutely. Two more questions, Sonny. We've got to run.
Mm-hmm.
I want to hear context for listeners and viewers, right? You started on it, super successful supplement company. Joe Rogan jumps on board and backs it. It just blows up, and then you exit. Super smart move, right? Now, I know you're very careful with what you put your time, energy, intention, money into. Now we've got this new thing that's come out. I've looked at it. I always follow my spirit bumps, right? So people call it goosebumps. I say I'm not a goose, but spirit speaks through me.
Yeah.
Right. So when spirit speaks through me, I get it. Whoop, hair stand up. So I read about Metalmark. I'm like, okay, this is good, clever. Okay, so for context, COVID hits. I see straight through the scam. I go, great. I see what's happening. It's a power grab. It's a money grab. Follow the money. The only standard stuff, right? So I went and bought a whole bunch of gold.
Good on you.
As you do, right? And gold has gone up 78% in the last 24 months. That's pretty cool. I mean, silver is still so suppressed. It's still a steal. And yet you can't make a smartphone without silver, yet most people don't have silver.
Silver and platinum are unusually price depressed. Strange, but gold is on fire.
Boom. And it's probably just started, right? Yep. So here, and I call it God's money, because your fiat money, it's the moment someone says, no, I'm not accepting fake money, it's not worth anything. We've seen it again over and over. Rise and fall of the English and the Dutch Empire and, whatever else. Now, gold combined with art. And if you don't like the art, you can just melt it and you still have the value of the freaking gold.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome business. Metalmark. Just a few words. I think, firstly, if people haven't got gold and silver, this is not financial advice, but seriously, have a look. Like the value of the dollar is going down. The value of gold has gone up. Silver and platinum, as you mentioned, is still on sale. And then we have art and gold combined. Tell us more. Awesome.
Yeah, I am so excited about this. Is like the coolest business. I mean, I loved on it. I poured my heart into it. I loved it with every cell. I was on it. Like it was a part of me. It was like a part of my flesh. But the Metalmark company it's just one of the coolest things I've ever been a part of. And I believe in it like unequivocally. So there's a couple advantages. One, so what it is gold that's able to be printed on in full, beautiful color.
The art is stunning.
It's stunning, but it's full 24 karat gold that's assayable and recoverable. So you can get a gold-plated something or another, but you can never get the gold out of it. Try to sell your gold-plated fucking dish or something like that. And I'm like, all right, what do I do with this? But this is easily melted down, and easily recoverable, and then you can sell it for the spot price of gold. But what it allows for is two things. One, fractional gold. So imagine in this post-apocalyptic world, nobody gives a shit about fiat. Exactly. And then you have, 1 ounce gold coins or maybe half ounce gold coins. Oh, all right. Well, at that point, maybe gold's $5,000 an ounce.
Do you have any exchange? No, I don't have any exchange.
I want some eggs. Here's $5,000 worth of gold. Or what are we going to do? If I can get a shaver and yeah. Like, it's just like, it doesn't make practical sense. But now it's in these note forms that mimic currency. Yeah. And a lot of central banks and states are looking at it as an alternative form of currency. And it's currency that's not gold backed. Like that was a big thing when our money was gold backed, and then they removed that, and that was something that
1972 he pulled it off, and then oh my gosh, that was betrayal right there.
Yeah, and then of course we just print as much money as we want, and then start as many wars as we want, and all kinds of crazy shit. So it's not gold backed money; it's gold money, right? It's literally gold money, and it comes in all kinds of different denominations. You can get 20 milligrams, 50 milligrams, 100 milligrams, half a gram, 2 grams. Like you can go up and scale. So you have a full currency spectrum. So just the utility of that availability. Now, you can't call it a currency unless it's actually been adopted by that local or or federal,
Mm.
level. There's some rules about that. So I'm not saying that Metalmark is a currency, but it can be used like a currency.
Yeah.
And I think in the future world that I want to live in, that is our currency.
God's money.
And so there's the utility of it. And that's just one aspect. And there's even opening up these ideas for orums, they're called. So all of these gold notes are called orums. And there's a marketplace that's developing for orums to have their own exchange rate. So actually the form factor is going to have built in the premium, just like Bitcoin can be exchanged for US dollars. There's an exchange rate for the orums that's even above the spot price, melt price of gold.
Interesting.
So that's another like beautiful aspect of something that's developing, because I think this is going to start to spread and stabilize money. I mean, I don't think money is evil, but if you trace all of the evil, you'll find that money played a role in it. And
Yep.
it's almost always the fiat money that played a role in this factor. So there's the utility aspect, but then I've been a collector my whole life. I've collected basketball cards, Magic the Gathering cards, comic books. I've collected all kinds of art, even original art, which has a long established value proposition. So I don't think that's going anywhere. But then there was the NFTs. I can't believe I forgot the name earlier, but NFTs, which were just pixels, and that market collapsed because what do you have at the end of the day? Something that's, I can take a screenshot of it and send it to my friend, and it's like, here you go, you can look at it. So there's no intrinsic value. It's paper, and if your house catches fire, it's still paper. It's paper that burns. And so, I have some Magic the Gathering cards that have value, and I have them in my safe. But if people just decide they don't like Magic the Gathering cards anymore, it's not worth anything. I bought a bunch of Garbage Pail Kids thinking that they would go
Oh my gosh,
explode in value.
Oh,
They haven't done shit. Nobody cares.
Was that in the 80s or something?
Yeah.
And that was
Nobody cares
funny,
about
man.
my Garbage Pail Kids, and they're just paper. But I guarantee if my Garbage Pail Kids were made out of 24 karat gold, assayable and
Always.
recoverable, at the very least, I'd be like, all those fucking Garbage Pail Kids I got, the gold value appreciated. Now I can melt them down if nobody wants these things. So it's then layering on top of it like beautiful limited edition collector's art. So our first drop was with Frank Frazetta, an incredible, iconic American artist. We have some other, deals in the works, and I won't spoil the surprise for the drops. We're working with some of the top artists in the contemporary space, and even getting licenses for some classic art to do these limited edition drops.
Ooh.
So there's the full collector's market and the art value on top of the gold value. And to me, it's just one of the coolest things from a utility standpoint, and also from a collector standpoint. Like, I want to collect as much stuff in gold.
Liquid sunshine. Huh?
Exactly. The liquid condensation of sunshine, as Robert Gilbert, a teacher who blessed us with all the years he lived on this world, he said. So yeah, it's a business that I'm really, really stoked about, and is really just a joy.
Where do we go to learn more?
mtlmrk.com. So we took the vowels out of Metalmark. Metalmark is actually a butterfly. And so this is, to me, it signifies like the transformation of money. This is the transformation of money into something more beautiful. Moving from the caterpillar fiat to the actual, the butterfly gold, gold standard. And I'm also, a big proponent of Bitcoin. It has a lot of utility, and it's important, also a finite amount. Yeah. So I see a more beautiful world where we have orums and we have Bitcoin. And I think so much of the drama and vile things that are happening in the world would level out in a world like that. And I think there'll always be some form of fiat and some form of this or that, but I just really believe in it. I believe in the importance of having sound money. And real actual value, like what is really intrinsically valuable. And it's just a cool fucking business. I also see the opportunity for like things that people want to be collector's items, but don't really make it. Like, you get a ticket to a Stanley Cup game or a Super Bowl or something like that. You get the ticket and you save it for a little while, and you're like, fuck it, what am I going to do with this? Imagine if they printed it on gold. Nobody throws away gold.
No.
You know what I mean? So like, there's so many different...
That in itself explains the fact that it has intrinsic value regardless of what's on it. let
Yeah.
alone beautiful art.
Yeah.
That's
Or
cool.
even like high fashion brands that
Mhm.
made a gold label, that or like a tag. Like like people, they put a lot of energy into that, and they want you to save it, but you don't save it,
Mm,
because it's fucking paper.
mm,
So it's just wasting. But if you actually printed it on gold, then you'd have your whatever it is. Like, all right, well, here's my fucking Gucci arm, like sick. You're like, I'm going to keep this, and then it'll brand the thing. So there's so many from just a business standpoint, so many areas where I think people will go,
mm.
and then the standardization of arms and having an exchange, so that there'll be a whole marketplace. And so we're not the company that prints the gold. We have a partnership with that company, but we're a mint that is doing some of the most cutting edge artistic deals and things. So yeah, it's a cool fucking company.
It's awesome. I love it. Okay, last question. Then we're going to roll. You ready? Straight
Yep.
off the cuff. I want you to imagine that you are on the world stage. Every sentient being alive has gathered. They're watching. They're tuning into your message to the world right now. Take a breath, take a time, and do share. Aubrey Marcus, what is your message to the world right now?
Before you were born, you looked down at the earth, and you saw that there was distortion, and there was greed, and there was inequity. And you understood that if you were going to incarnate, you would forget all of the truth of God's love and the eternity and continuity of consciousness. You'd forget all of it. You'd be subject to indoctrination. You'd be subject to attacks from all vectors.